सलाम पाकिस्तान। मैं हूं इफ्तिखार फिरदौस और आप देख रहे हैं बॉर्डर टॉक्स। नाजरीन, आलमी और रीजनल सूरत हाल बदल रही है। हम देख रहे हैं कि नए अलायंसेस बन रहे हैं, पुराने ऑर्डर्स जो है वो टूट रहे हैं। हालिया दिनों में अगर हम देखें तो मॉस्को समिट, जिसके अंदर भी अफगानिस्तान का जिक्र है और काउंटर टेररिज्म उसका एक मेन आंसर है। इसके अलावा भी अगर हम देखें तो जो मुत्तकी साहब हैं, जो अफगान इंटरिम फॉरेन मिनिस्टर हैं, वो गए हैं इंडिया पर और किसी भी अफगान फॉरेन मिनिस्टर का ये सबसे लंबा दौरा है, तकरीबन 8 दिन का। इसके अलावा अफगानिस्तान के अंदर कुछ बेचैनी भी है और हमने देखा कि कुछ जॉइंट स्टेटमेंट्स भी जो है वो आए हैं बगराम के हवाले से, खुसूसी वहाँ पर जो अमेरिका ने दोबारा कहा है कि हमें बगराम की जो है वो ज़रूरत है। क्या इसकी हकीकत है, ये पॉसिबल है नहीं है? और अफगानिस्तान कंसिस्टेंटली लाइमलाइट में आ रहा है और उसका जो सबसे बड़ा सफर है, जो सिचुएशन वहाँ पे डेवलप हो रही है वो पाकिस्तान है। रोज़ाना के हिसाब से शहादतें जो है वो सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस की हो रही है, इलाकाई बदअमनी जो है वो फैल रही है। ऑल्दो कंसिस्टेंटली उसी तरह जो है वो मिलिट्री ऑपरेशंस और काइनेटिक एफर्ट्स तो जारी हैं, लेकिन जो एक कंसिस्टेंट तनाव जो बना हुआ है रीजन के अंदर, वो ख़त्म होता हुआ नहीं आ रहा। सवाल पूछेंगे, तज्जिया लेंगे जनाब वाले रिकार्डो साहब से, जिन्होंने हमें वेनिस से जो है ज्वाइन माने हुए जो है वो सियासी और ग्लोबल तज्जियाकार हैं, जो सिक्योरिटी अमूर को जो है वो देखते हैं। थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस वाले। I wanted to ask and start with, in terms of Afghanistan, first is the internal and regional security landscape. Why is it again and again becoming consistently a problem? We see that several international, regional and even local organizations are portraying it, that it terms to be harboring several international, the term that they've been using technically is the FTOs, which is foreign terrorist organization. And it doesn't seem that the Afghan Taliban are sort of changing the way that they're operating these groups or harboring them in one way or another. And there's definitely scoped international concern. We've seen the Moscow summit recently, we've seen the UN reports. Why is it not sort of curtailing these things and addressing the international, regional and local concerns?
Thank you, Iftikhar. So, yeah, exactly. You just summarized some of the main developments that we have been seeing since within the last 4 months, 5 months, I would say, in several international forums and within international institutions regarding the terrorist threat emanating from Afghanistan, either as a direct threat to Afghanistan or to its neighbors and the entire region. And this is also why we have to put into perspective Muttaqi's visit to India recently, just after the conclusion of the Moscow summit, the seventh round of the Moscow summit. So we see that consistently the international community has pointed out how Afghanistan, even after August 2021, remains unfortunately a key hotspot for terrorist activities. This has been reiterated frequently in all the United Nations Security Council report by the monitoring team. So, including the most recent one in July this year, the 36th report, stated that there are still several actors either antagonistic to the Afghan Taliban, such as the Islamic State, or either ideologically or politically aligned or close to the Afghan Taliban, such as the TTP.
But this is something new that we've seen. It also actually mentions the Baloch part of it, in which you've seen several groups of the Baloch being called out to be realigned with the Taliban. We haven't seen that kind of reportage from the UN's Security Council, and we haven't seen that much of a discussion. Why has it become suddenly into the limelight now?
So I think that we have to go back to one watershed moment for the international community's perspective on the Baloch militant groups, which is the Jafar Express attack of early this year. So what happened is that we saw that already in August this year, there was a joint statement between Pakistan and the United States which acknowledged the risk posed by several militant groups to the security of Pakistan and the overall region, the TTP, but also for the first time the BLA. And we saw the also listed in the BLA Majid brigades being listed as a terrorist organization. And from that moment, we saw that not only the United States, but also other important regional actors, state actors, such as China and Russia, and also Iran themselves, on the margin of the General Assembly latest meeting in September, which just ended, on the margin on the General Assembly, Pakistan, China, and Russia and Iran put out a statement once again reiterating the need to counter, to support Afghanistan in its fight against the terrorist threat propagating from Afghanistan, and also highlighting how the risk of that these groups pose from Afghanistan are also affecting the whole stability of the region. And among these groups, two I think are the most interesting, which is of course Baloch militant groups, specifically the BLA, but also another instance is the mentioning for the first time of 𝐕𝐢𝐬𝐢. So we know that also Iran has made recently claims since last year that 𝐕𝐢𝐬𝐢 has also hideouts in Afghanistan from where they can strike inside its Balochistan province, which is an interesting development because in the past we know that Iran had frequently highlighted the fact that it stressed the fact that Pakistan needed to do more in countering cross-border attacks of 𝐕𝐢𝐬𝐢 from Pakistan to Iran, making these allegations. However, now we see a change. We see that Iran is actually highlighting that 𝐕𝐢𝐬𝐢 has possibly moved its hideouts in Afghanistan, where it can reorganize and then strike within the country. And then, as you mentioned before, the last instance is this Moscow summit, where again Afghanistan has been highlighted as one of the.
But we do see that when I looked at the Moscow summit's outcome in terms of its official statement, and then I looked at TASS News, particularly its headline, which says that it's emanating from Afghanistan, and Afghanistan needs to do more in terms of curtailing, terrorist entities that are harming its, neighbors, immediate neighbors. But then Russia also recognizes the Taliban in terms of its leverage and its capacity to influence what's happening in Afghanistan. It was astonishing to me that, that kind of statement would be given, which obviously doesn't completely sort of, look into the claims of what the Afghan Taliban have to say, because they've been saying that there is no threat from Afghanistan literally to any country.
Yes, exactly. I think this is a clear sign on how Russia and neighboring countries are approaching Afghanistan. So, of course, providing the diplomatic coverage to Afghanistan and granting the recognition of the Taliban government by Russia is an important step towards also framing possibly and a joint collaboration in curbing terrorism from Afghanistan. The main issue, which involves, of course, Afghanistan, Russia, and the neighboring regions, and neighboring countries. One of the main issue is that, as you were mentioning at the start of the conversation, we don't see clear signs from the Taliban government, as have been pointed out by several stakeholders and observers, in curbing out all forms of militant activities propagating from Afghanistan. And specifically, we saw this with the recent shutdown of the internet coverage from Afghanistan. So several analysts and observers noted that Pakistani Taliban affiliated social media accounts, not the official one, but mostly those run by local militants, by rank and file militants. They also went silent for 48 hours, with some caveats, of course, which point out the fact that there are continuous movements of these militants from Pakistan to Afghanistan and vice versa. But again, this is a clear indication that within Afghanistan there are militant groups that are still capable of operating with a fair degree of freedom. We also had some recent reports of commanders of other factions of the Pakistani Taliban, which have been cited in Kabul, and this is all pretty common. So this is a known fact of these militant.
So we got to take a small little break over here. But coming back, I will ask you, because there's the question that keeps on arising is that why hasn't it been able to solve Pakistan's TTP problem, which is emanating from Afghanistan? नाज़रीन हमारे साथ रहिएगा, वापस आकर पहले रिकार्डो से सवाल जो है यही पूछेंगे कि अफगानिस्तान क्यों ये मसला जो अभी तक हल नहीं कर सका. Welcome back, नाज़रीन. Well, my question to you was, one is the local perspective that we see in terms of ideology, that the Tehreek-e-Taliban, whether it's Pakistan or Afghanistan or Tajikistan, when we look at the narrative shaping, it's almost under the similar umbrella. So there is no differentiation. But that's a very localized understanding in terms of to say that why the group is not acting against its subsidiaries. From a global lens, when you look at more strategic sort of accountability in terms of why it's not happening, what's the perspective outside Pakistan in terms of why wouldn't the Afghan Taliban actually take action against elements which Pakistan accuses it of harboring on its soil and carrying out attacks in Pakistan?
So, Iftikhar, I think that this is deeply rooted in the history of the region, in the history of the Afghan Jihad, of course, and in the history of Pakistani Taliban assisting the Afghan Taliban during their struggle in Afghanistan. And since the beginning, if we look back at the early statements of the Pakistani Taliban, even before 2007, the main objective was to, of course, reinstate the emirate in Afghanistan and then subsequently shift the focus from Afghanistan to Pakistan. So that has always been the objective of all Pakistani Taliban factions. And this, of course, has also been shared by those Afghan Taliban that historically have supported the Pakistani Taliban. So this is something that relates, is deeply connected to